Alright guys, so this is a continuance of the video from before. We're getting ready to put the cams back in. I'm going to show you the difference between the two cams, the one that we took out and the one that we're putting back in. Now this is kind of weird though, because the cam that we took out, I'm not sure if it was an OEM cam or not, which leads me to believe that this car has been rebuilt before and who knows what they put in it. So if you come over here, this is the cam we took out on the top, and you can see the difference between, that's the bad lobe, that's the one that got ground down. And you can see the difference here between what it should look like and what it does look like. Look at the difference there, you see that? And this one, that's how much was buzzed off. So what we did was we went through the motor, pulled the oil pan down, sprayed all the grindings out of the crankcase, the whole deal. Now one thing that I did notice with this cam versus this cam is that if you look at the end of the damaged cam here, there's really nothing on the end of it. There's no markings that tell whether or not this is even an OEM cam. Now if you look at the cam that I'm putting into the car, big difference there. It's got all the original markings on it and everything. Now, if you're doing this under a budget, like I'm doing it in my backyard, you know, just trying to get this thing back up on the road, there is some stuff that you can cut corners on, but there's some stuff I'd really highly suggest you don't. When you pull the cam out of there, make sure you check the cam races, make sure that there's no burned or scorch marks on the actual bearings that the cam sits on. Check when you're looking at the old cam, check the surfaces where the races sit. If you see anything that's scorched, burnt, anything like that, then you're probably going to have to pull the motor and you're going to have to get all those races replaced. Luckily for me, on this particular car, none of those were burnt up. Every single one of these looks like it's in great shape. They're nice and smooth. There's no chunks, there's nothing with these, so looks like we're pretty good. It looks like mostly all the stuff that was shaved off at this one lobe right here was centrally located and mostly dropped to the bottom of the pan. I've thoroughly looked the rest of the motor over. Anything and everything that has filters on it, anything and everything that had any signs of any type of little metal flakes, we've completely replaced. Now, if you're doing it on a budget, again, like I said, there's certain things that you can and you cannot go cheap on. One thing I would highly suggest you don't go cheap on is get yourself a factory cam. They're more expensive, but at least you know you have a factory cam in there. It's not gonna take a big giant steamy dump on you. Number two, go with the Dorman updated all aluminum MDS solenoids, and I'll show you that later. Because the factory solenoids are crap. The whole bottom of the solenoid's plastic, and when you go to pull them out, they separate and pieces go flying all over the place, and the last thing you need to do is chase down a piece that fell down into one of the holes on the motor. The Dormans won't do that, and they're all aluminum, which is kind of nice, so they'll hold up better. Especially being, you know, with hot and cold and the heat of the motor, they're not going to fail like the factory ones. Same thing with the VVT solenoid, which is the variable valve timing solenoid. Don't cheap out on it, just get the nice one, replace it. Because you're in there, don't use the old one. Don't think, oh, you know, I can just clean this one up and throw it back in there. Just replace it. It's not that expensive. The other thing you do not want to cheap out on is the hydraulic rollers. Check all your hydraulic rollers. If they all roll nice and smooth and there's no wear or tear on them, no flat spotting on them, they look like they're perfect, you can get away with using them. There's a lot of people who are like, oh no, don't use those, don't use those. If they look fine, throw an ass load of assembly lube on it and reuse them. I bought another set so that I can replace not only the one that was bad, but I can also replace a couple of the other ones with the newer updated roller rockers, or the newer updated hydraulic lifters, so that a few of them that I even think are slightly iffy I'm going to replace. And make sure that you use tons and tons of assembly lube on everything. So this is the stuff that I'm using. It's called Stay Lube. It's got moly with graphite in it. You don't have to use this brand. This is just the one that I'm using because it's highly recommended. And this one is also good for cams. Some of them do not, you can't use it with a cam, you have to use a cam assembly lube. So if you're reading the back of the engine assembly lube tube, just make sure it says recommended for engines, transmission, final assembly, for use on camshaft bearings, lobes, crankshafts, engine bearings, gears, push rods, valve stems, all that. So you can use this on everything. The nice thing about this stuff is that when you go to start the car for the first time, you're not going to get a dry start. Everything will be extra lubricated. Don't be afraid to use a lot of this stuff. Don't go sparingly on this. I mean, slab everything with this, because this stuff breaks down with engine oil. So I'd probably like run your car for maybe 1,000 miles and then change the engine oil and you should be all right. So we're going to lube this whole thing up, and then I'll show you guys the sliding in it and all that. So stay tuned. Ready? Okay, so now that we got this thing nice and greased up, you know, take your time, grease it, because you'll think that you have all the surfaces all nice and lubed up, and then you'll find out there's some dry spots. So like I said, you know, go thick with this stuff, because the more grease you use, the safer it's going to be. Now we go to slide this thing in. I've seen some videos online where people are going to slide one of these out and it gets caught up and they're all like, man, it's getting stuck on something. If you've pulled apart the whole top end, you've pulled apart everything like we've done on this motor, you've got, you know, the lifters, all that stuff out, you've got it all the way down to this point where there's no chain on it, nothing. What'll happen is I kind of ran into the same spot where it kind of hung up a little bit. As you're pulling it out, support it with a nut on the end and try and keep it as straight as you can. It's heavy, but try and keep it very straight, and slightly twist it and twist it and twist it and twist it, and you'll kind of feel it start to come out. I mean, it doesn't want to come out like super easy, but it'll come out. Just don't force it out or you're going to mess up all of the races that it sits on. Now when we go to put this back in, we're going to slightly twist it and keep it as straight as we can, and just kind of let it go in there at its own pace. That way we don't mess up any of those cam races. So we're going to slowly support it and get it in there so that it goes in nice and smooth. And get this bad boy back up in there, back in its little home. And you can kind of feel it go in, but it'll kind of drop down a little bit as it goes into each one of the sections that it needs to go into. And don't get frustrated, just take your time. And it'll go right back up in there. Ta-da! See how easy that was? Just take your time doing it, because if you try and rush and you try and force it in there, you'll mess up the bearings that it sits on. And if you mess up those bearings, unless you're some kind of fucking MacGyver that I don't know about, you're not going to be able to replace those on yourself. I mean, and if there is somebody that has a video that shows how to replace those bearings in there without ripping this complete motor out and doing it some kind of magical way, I'd love to see that. Send it to me, because you know, this probably by far will not be the last one of these that I do. Now this particular cam that we're putting in here, this is just a stock cam. I'm not doing anything crazy to this motor because it's already pushing 475 horsepower stock. You know, it's in one of the original RTs where they only made so many of them per year. So it's the original SRT before they built the Hellcats and before they built, you know, the Scat Packs and all that stuff. So I'm trying to keep this one relatively, you know, all the way it was when it was built. So trust me, it still has plenty of horsepower. It'll still burn rubber. It'll still be a fun car, but I want to try and keep it so it's somewhat dependable. And again, that's why I'm using as many OEM parts as I can afford to use. Now, the non-OEM stuff that I'm using is obviously the Dorman MDS, just because I'm using updated, nicer ones. You know, I'm going to use the steel 4-piece head gasket sets. You know, all new rubber O-rings. I'll use the new rubber seal for the timing case cover. I'm not going to change out the timing chain or the timing chain tensioners or anything, because I've already looked at those and they're in really good shape. There's hardly any wear and tear on it, and the timing chain looks almost brand new. And this motor only has just over 100,000 miles on it, and because it's already been pulled apart before, I'm not thinking that there's a whole lot of wear and tear on those parts, and I'm not seeing it. So, you know, just thoroughly inspect, and if you have any second thoughts, replace it if you can afford to. If not, then, you know, do the best that you can. But again, certain parts I would use OEM, and those OEM parts would definitely be the lifters and definitely the cam. And I cannot stress this enough, get yourself a high flow oil pump. We're going to put a high flow oil pump on here so it has much better oiling characteristics than the standard oil pump. They really should have just done that from the factory. So I'm going to go ahead and finish doing what I got to do here, and I'll see you here in just a few seconds.
You good?
Okay guys, so now that the cam's in, there's this plate right here, as you can see. Now when we went to take the cam out, I didn't realize that this plate came off. I was kind of a dumbass and I tried pulling the cam out, and then I'm all like, oh duh, there's a plate cover on the top of it. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, wait a second, if there was no plate on there, what the hell would keep the cam from coming out whenever it felt like it and saying hello? So we're putting this plate back on. There's 4 Torx head bolts, these little tiny ones here. Just remember when you're pulling the cam off to take the plate off. When you put the plate back on, I used assembly lube on the back side of the plate just because it goes right up against the front side of the cam. That way it's nice and lubed up. So we're going to put this on. After you get the plate on, then obviously you'll reinstall the cam phaser / cam gear. There's only one way to put it on, because you have an alignment pin here on the cam. And if you look on the back side right here, you can see where the alignment pin goes in. I put some assembly lube in there too, since it sits right on the face of the cam, you know, just be on the safe side. When you go to tighten the cam bolt, it's an 18. What I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble all the parts on here slowly but surely, and put the chain and everything back on. But when I go to torque everything, the torque spec for the cam bolt is 95 foot-pounds. So make sure that you torque all this stuff back to factory specs. There's a reason for it. Don't just hand tighten it on there and think, I'm good, I'll roll like that. Because I mean, you're talking 475 horsepower, and if that thing isn't torqued correctly, there's a chance that this right here can become loose, or you can shear that alignment pin right off, and then nothing good's gonna happen. So I'm gonna go ahead and assemble all these parts, and then I will kind of walk you through here in a second on exactly how I did it.
You can go.
Okay, so if you look at the front here, you can see that we've put the phaser back on. This bolt right here is going to be 95 foot-pounds, like I said before. It's not 95 foot-pounds yet, because obviously I want to put the chain and everything back on first. That way when I go to hit this with 95 foot-pounds, it doesn't just spin around. So we put the chain back on. Now there's a whole bunch of videos that show you how to do the timing on these. It's pretty easy. If you look at the phaser, right underneath one of the teeth, there's a little tiny line that goes up and down, kind of like the 2 lines that are on the chain right here. You'll be able to see it. It's the only line on the entire timing gear on the back of the phaser. Now the chain, you can line both the marks up on both sides of the tooth where the line is, or you can just make sure that the phaser is exactly up. Now as far as the timing on the actual crank, right here where the teeth are at, you'll see on the bottom of one of these teeth, you'll see a little round circle, a little round hole. That's your timing mark. Make sure that little round hole is exactly straight down at the 6 o'clock. Exactly straight down. As long as it's at the 6 o'clock, you'll be good to go. And you'll be able to tell if it's at the 6 o'clock because the number 1 piston right here will be absolutely flush on the top. Okay, so that's how you'll know. When you go to put the chain on, the 2 marks on the chain correspond to both sides of that mark, and then there's another mark on the chain that's down here that should correspond right where the little dot's at. Now, if it's a hair off, don't worry about it too much. As long as the mark on the crank and as long as the mark on the phaser are dead on, you're golden. I mean, you don't even have to mark up the marks on the chain. As long as the mark on the phaser is good and the mark on the crank is good, you're golden. Okay. And then, as you can see, I put the chain guide back on. Now, when you put the chain guides back on, make sure that the little recessed area on the chain guides is facing towards you. Put the bolts back in, and make sure it's exactly the same way that I put it on here, because it has a groove here, because when you go to put the oil pump back on, it has to clear the holes for the oil pump. Okay, same thing with this one. You can see the grooves. If you look at the back side of it, it doesn't have these little like insets for the bolts. Okay, and then you see here I've just got a nail in there. When you go to take this off, there's like a piston here with a spring on it. So be careful, because this is not trapped in here. It'll fall out. Don't ask me how I know. I almost dropped it in the oil pan. What you do is you squeeze that back and just put a nail or whatever you have through the hole and lock it in place. That way when you go to reinstall it, you can just pull it out and it'll spring forward and it'll lock in place and it'll tension the chain. Pretty simple. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish putting on a few more parts, and I'll walk you through that in a second. Don't worry, all this crap right here, we're going to clean all that up. When you put the case back on, I'd suggest getting a new gasket seal for this. Don't reuse the old one. You can get a brand new OEM one. I think I paid $7 for it, so don't chintz out, just get a new one. All right. All right, guys, so I'm going to do this update real quick. We got the oil pump on and everything. All right, now, just about all the videos tell you in order to take the pump off, put the pump on, you have to remove the motor. And the reason why is because there's a pickup tube that's bolted to several places inside the oil pan. And they say that you got to be able to pull the oil pan off. Well, you got your cross member and you got your power steering rack and all this other crap that keeps you from pulling the oil pan off. So what we ended up doing was we removed all the oil pan bolts. So the oil pan's kind of loose, and you can see the gasket right here. This right here, come around this way and you can see it more. So this right here is your pickup tube. There's a 13mm bolt here, and there's 4 13mm bolt here. So what you got to do is, as soon as you remove the oil pan, it gives you just enough room to get a wrench in there. Just be careful of the gasket here, because this is a metal gasket with rubber on it. It's reusable, and you don't want to mess it all up. Okay, you can see they didn't use any gasket sealant or anything around here. So we're just going to clean up the edges a little bit and slap it back on. So anyway, what you want to do, if you want to take this 13mm bolt out, you got to use an open-ended wrench, because one of those ratchet wrenches won't fit between the tube and the bolt. Take the bolt out, don't drop it in the pan. If you do, hope you got a magnet and a lot of spare time on your hands to fish it out. So once you take that out, you're going to take a big screwdriver, like the biggest screwdriver you got. You're going to gently press between here and here, take all the bolts out, and as soon as it starts to clear, because this is somewhat flexible, you can basically bend it down just enough to get it out of your way and pull this off. When you put it back on, you're going to have to do the same thing, but this thing will be slightly bent from when you pried it down. So when you go to put it back on, what I ended up doing was I ended up bolting the oil pump back in place by flexing this slightly out of the way, then grabbing it and pushing it back up in there, and then I used a pair of vice grips, and I vice gripped it right back up into place until it was flush. Now if you leave it there for a little bit, once you ease the vice grips back off, it should stay in place like mine did, because it slightly bends it back in place. All of these bolts are 21 foot-pounds, so 21 foot-pounds on these. I usually like to do it in an X pattern just because I'm a fucking weirdo, and I like to make sure that, you know, it seats properly. This is not a Mellings oil pump, but it is the exact same part number, and it's cheaper than a Mellings, and it is a high flow oil pump. So there are alternatives that are a little bit less expensive that are the exact same part number, and they're still high flow. Use a high flow oil pump. The more oil you can pump all around this thing, the better chances you have of not flat spotting another cam. And I don't even know why they call it flat spotting. It's more like shredding it to bits. It's more like grinding it to a nub. It's not flat spotting, it's grinding, okay? So if you want to use the millings, use the millings. But there are other alternatives. Like I said, this one here is the exact same part number as the millings high flow, and this is a high flow also. And when you go to put the pump on, obviously you got to make sure it gears up there, and don't force nothing. Once you have it just right, it'll fit right into place. This thing, once you get it back up in there and you have it vice gripped in place, ease off the vice grips and make sure that it's pretty flat. The hole might not be lined up exactly to the hole here, so you can use a huge screwdriver and put it between the back of the block and the very edge of this and slightly bend it until the hole matches up perfectly. I mean, it's tedious, and it literally took us over half an hour to get this one damn bolt back in. But take your time, because it's one of the most important parts of this whole rebuilding. Because if this pickup tube doesn't fit flat back in here with the gasket and everything, doesn't matter what kind of oil pump you have if it can't suck any oil from the damn oil pan. Okay? So that's how you do that. Okay guys, so this is something they probably don't mention to you at all. I'm going to go over this real quick. I mean, there's some videos that show it and there's some that don't. So anyway, if you look down into the MDS hole right here, you can see like that little X. You can use a pair of needle nose pliers and pull that out. And what that is it's this little tiny magnet right here. Turn it around. And what it is that little magnet captures all kinds of little metal and all kinds of crap that flows around inside the MDS ports and where the oil ports are at. And that gets a lot of crap on it. And what you want to do is pull those out with a needle nose plier, wipe them up, clean them really good, and then just stick them back down in there. Okay? So they go right down here into these MDS ports. So make sure that you take them out and you clean them up, because the ones that I took out, they had a lot of fine metal and stuff on them. So make sure that you take care of that. Then you can see all the front hairs all bolted back on, so you can see how pretty everything is. Looks all nice. I'm gonna paint the timing cover orange just so it looks better, you know. Ode to hemi. Plus, you know, it just looks cool because the whole block is orange, so I might as well just stick with it. So, all right, so we're putting the MDS solenoids back in. Now I decided to go with some aftermarket ones versus the factory ones. These are Dormans. Here's a picture of the box so you can get like a model number and everything on them. And I'll show you why I'm using these ones instead of the factory ones. In a second here. I'll hold that for me real quick. Alright, so I'll show you why we're using these. Now the factory ones, every time you pull the factory ones out, the whole head snaps off and everything else, and they're terrible. They fail. They're just genuinely not built very well. Take a look at these bad boys. These are all aluminum, so even if you have to replace or take one out for any reason, they're not going to break in half. They'll come out in one piece. They're super high quality. I think they actually look much better quality than the factory original ones, and that's why I'm using these. So I'm going to put some engine assembly lube on all the little gaskets, and then we just pop them in place. And then as you can see right here, we went ahead and ordered a brand new harness as well, because these harnesses, being that they sit here in the valley, they get really brittle and they crack, and when you pull them off, you don't know whether or not you're going to break a wire or something's going to take a big giant steamy skadoosh on you. So anyway, that's it. So okay, we're also going to be replacing the engine variable valve timing solenoid, and this is the part number. Of course it says made in China on it, but it's also one of the more expensive ones because I didn't want to go super chintzy on it. But chances are I didn't need to replace a lot of this, but I'm replacing it anyway, just because who knows what the little metal shavings got into. But anyway, this right here is what it looks like, just in case you need to know what it looks like. That's the bad boy right there. The one that I took out had a lot of little metal shavings all around the screen. And if this thing can focus, you can see the screens on it. See, it's got little screens right in there. And this right here, this part, is gonna go right here, right in here, and it comes and it pokes out. And it basically takes care of the variable timing. So don't ask me exactly how it works. I'm sure if you really want to know the intricacies of it, you can look up a video on that. All I know is that the one that I had sucked, so we're going to replace that too.